Story. The dust swirled around Sarah Mitchell's worn boots as she stumbled into the town of Redemption, Texas, in the scorching summer of 1878. Her 8-month-old son Joshua clutched against her chest, hunger gnawing at her belly and desperation carved into every line of her face. The main street stretched before her like a gauntlet of judgment, lined with wooden storefronts and suspicious eyes that tracked her progress as she made her way toward what looked like a general store. Her dress hung loose on her frame, faded calico that had once been pretty but now spoke only of hardship and miles traveled on foot. The baby whimpered against her shoulder, and Sarah felt her heart clench with the familiar mixture of love and fear that had become her constant companion since the day Thomas had ridden away without looking back. /N/N, she pushed through the door of the general store, the bell above announcing her arrival with a cheerful jingle that felt at odds with the heaviness in her soul. The proprietor, a round-faced woman with iron-gray hair, looked up from behind the counter, and her expression shifted from curiosity to wariness in the span of a heartbeat. Sarah knew what the woman saw: a young mother alone with a baby, no ring on her finger, no man at her side. The scarlet letter might as well have been branded across her forehead for all the subtlety in the stares she received. /N/N/ help you? The woman asked, her tone clipped and cold. /N/ Sarah swallowed her pride, that bitter pill she had learned to choke down day after day. I'm looking for work, she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her legs. Any kind of work. I can clean, cook, mend clothes, tend animals. I'm a hard worker, ma'am, and I won't cause any trouble. And the woman's eyes flicked to Joshua, then back to Sarah's face. We don't need any help here, she said flatly. You might try the saloon. They're always looking for girls. And the implication hung in the air like smoke, acrid and insulting. Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she held the woman's gaze. I'm not that kind of girl, she said quietly. I just need honest work to feed my son. And should have thought about that before, the woman muttered, turning back to her ledger with a dismissive gesture. And Sarah backed out of the store, blinking against the sudden brightness of the afternoon sun. Joshua had begun to cry in earnest now, his small face scrunched and red with hunger and discomfort. She bounced him gently, making soothing sounds even as her own eyes burned with unshed tears. She had walked 3 days to reach this town, sleeping in ditches and abandoned barns, sharing what little food she had with her baby. Her milk had started to dry up from stress and malnutrition, and she was terrified of what would happen if she could not find a way to provide for him. N she tried the saloon next, though every instinct screamed against it. The bartender, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained teeth, looked her up and down with an expression that made her skin crawl. You willing to entertain the customers? He asked with a leer. And I can serve drinks and clean, Sarah said firmly. Nothing else. And he snorted. Then I got no use for you, sweetheart. Girls here earn their keep on their backs, not scrubbing floors. And Sarah turned and walked out before he could see the tears spill over. She made her way down the street, trying the seamstress, the boarding house, even the livery stable. Each door closed in her face with varying degrees of hostility or indifference. By the time the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Sarah found herself sitting on the edge of a horse trough, rocking Joshua and singing to him in a voice that cracked with exhaustion. And hush, little baby, don't say a word, she sang softly. Mama is going to buy you a mockingbird. And but she had nothing to buy him with. Her pockets were empty save for a few pennies, not enough for a meal, certainly not enough for a room. She would be sleeping under the stars again tonight, and the thought filled her with a weary despair that threatened to swallow her whole. Backslash and backslash and backslash, that's a pretty song, backslash, a voice said from behind her. Backslash and Sarah started, turning to find a man standing a respectful distance away. He was tall and lean, with shoulders that spoke of hard work and a face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes were a startling blue, clear and direct, and they regarded her with something that looked like genuine concern rather than judgment. He wore the clothes of a working cowboy, dusty denim and worn leather, a hat pulled low over dark hair that curled at his collar. There was a kindness in his face that made something in Sarah's chest ache. Backslash and backslash, thank you. Backslash, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Backslash and he tilted his head, studying her with those penetrating blue eyes. Backslash, you look like you've had a rough time of it, backslash, he said gently. Backslash, when's the last time you ate? Backslash and Sarah wanted to lie, to preserve some shred of dignity, but her body betrayed her. Her stomach growled audibly in the silence, and she felt her face flame with embarrassment. Backslash, yesterday morning, backslash, she admitted. Backslash and the cowboy's jaw tightened. Backslash and the baby, backslash and backslash, I fed him what I could, backslash, Sarah said, her arms tightening protectively around Joshua. Backslash, he's hungry too. I've been trying to find work, but no one will hire me. Backslash and backslash, why's that, backslash, the cowboy asked, though from the knowing look in his eyes, Sarah suspected he already understood. Backslash and she lifted her chin, meeting his gaze squarely. Backslash, because I have a baby and no husband, backslash, she said, the words coming out harder than she intended. Backslash, because people look at me and make assumptions about what kind of woman I am. Backslash and backslash, what kind of woman are you? Backslash, he asked, and there was no judgment in the question, only curiosity. Backslash and Sarah took a shaky breath. Backslash, I'm a woman who loved the wrong man, backslash, she said quietly. Backslash, I'm a woman who believed promises that turned out to be lies. My baby's father abandoned us, left one morning while I was sleeping and never came back. Took everything we had and left me with nothing but his son and a whole lot of shame. Backslash and the cowboy was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped closer, crouching down so he was at eye level with her. Backslash, what's your name, backslash, he asked. Backslash and Sarah Mitchell. And this is Joshua. Backslash and I'm Cole Walker, backslash, he said, and extended his hand. Sarah shook it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Backslash, Sarah, I work on a ranch about 5 miles outside of town, the Double R. Owner's name is Robert Reynolds, and his wife Emma has been looking for help with the house and the cooking. They've got 3 hands including me, and Emma's been run ragged trying to keep up with everything. It's honest work and it comes with room and board. Backslash and Sarah stared at him, afraid to let hope bloom in her chest. Backslash, why would you help me? Backslash, she asked suspiciously. Backslash, you don't even know me. Backslash and Cole smiled, and it transformed his face, softening the hard edges and revealing a warmth that made Sarah's heart skip. Backslash, my mama raised me to help people when they need it, backslash, he said simply. Backslash, and you need it. Besides, I know what it's like to be judged for something that wasn't entirely your fault. Folks can be cruel, but that doesn't mean we all have to be. Backslash and I won't accept charity, backslash, Sarah said, straightening her spine. Backslash, I'll work hard. I'll earn my keep. Backslash and I wouldn't expect anything less, backslash, Cole said, rising to his feet. Backslash, now, first things first. Let's get some food and you and the baby, then we'll ride out to the ranch and I'll introduce you to the Reynolds. Sound like a plan, and Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak around the lump in her throat. Cole offered her his hand and helped her to her feet, his touch gentle and respectful. He led her to a small restaurant at the end of the main street, a humble place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of home cooking wafting from the kitchen. The owner, a Mexican woman with kind eyes, brought them plates heaped with beef stew and fresh bread without comment when Cole explained the situation. And Sarah ate slowly, trying not to wolf down the food despite her gnawing hunger. She fed Joshua mashed vegetables and bits of soft bread, and the baby's delighted gurgles brought a genuine smile to her face for the first time in weeks. Across the table, Cole watched them with an expression that Sarah could not quite decipher. How old is he? Cole asked, nodding toward Joshua. 8 months, Sarah said, wiping the baby's chin with a napkin. He's a good baby. Hardly ever cries unless he's hungry or tired. He's got your eyes, Cole observed. Pretty brown like autumn leaves. And Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks again, but this time it was not from shame. Thank you, she murmured. And they finished the meal in companionable silence, and then Cole settled the bill and led Sarah outside to where his horse was tethered. The animal was a handsome bay gelding with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor. Cole swung into the saddle with easy grace, then reached down to help Sarah up. She settled behind him, Joshua secure in her arms, and wrapped one arm around Cole's waist to steady herself. She could feel the solid warmth of him through his shirt, the steady rhythm of his breathing. And the ride to the double R took them through rolling grassland dotted with mesquite and live oak. The sun was setting in earnest now, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. Despite her exhaustion, Sarah found herself drinking in the beauty of it, the vast open sky and the endless horizon. It had been so long since she had allowed herself to notice such things, consumed as she was with the daily struggle to survive. It's beautiful, she said softly. And she felt Cole nod. It is, he agreed. This land gets in your blood. Makes you feel small and significant all at once. And the ranch house came into view as they crested a low hill. It was a sprawling structure of adobe and wood, with a wide porch and flower boxes at the windows. Outbuildings dotted the property, barns and corrals and a bunkhouse for the hands. Cattle grazed in the distance, dark shapes against the fading light. Smoke rose from the chimney, promising warmth and shelter. And Cole reined in the horse at the front porch and dismounted, then helped Sarah down with careful hands. Joshua had fallen asleep against her shoulder, worn out by the day's events. Cole knocked on the door, and after a moment it swung open to reveal a woman in her late 40s with graying blonde hair and a face lined by laughter and sun. And Cole. She said warmly. Then her eyes shifted to Sarah, and the baby and her expression turned curious. Who's this? And Emma. This is Sarah Mitchell and her son Joshua, Cole said. Sarah's looking for work, and I remembered you mentioning you could use help around the house. She's a hard worker and she needs a fresh start. I was hoping you and Robert might consider giving her a chance. And Emma's gaze moved over Sarah, taking in the worn dress and the exhaustion etched in her features, the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because her expression softened. Come inside, she said, stepping back to allow them entry. Backslash you look dead on your feet, dear. Let's get you settled and we can talk about the details in the morning. And the interior of the house was warm and welcoming, with handmade furniture and colorful rugs on the polished wood floors. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, and the smell of dinner still lingered in the air. A man rose from a chair by the fire as they entered, tall and broad-shouldered with silver hair and a weathered face that spoke of years spent working the land. Robert, this is Sarah Mitchell, Emma said, making introductions. Cole brought her. She needs work and we need help. I think it might be a good fit. And Robert Reynolds studied Sarah with shrewd gray eyes, then nodded slowly. Any friend of Cole's is welcome here, he said, his voice a deep rumble. We'll talk terms tomorrow. For tonight, you and the little one need rest. And Emma showed Sarah to a small room off the kitchen, simply furnished with a bed, a dresser, and a rocking chair. This was our daughter's room, Emma said softly. She married a few years back and moved to San Antonio. It's been sitting empty, and I'm glad to have it put to good use again. And Sarah felt tears prick her eyes at the kindness in Emma's voice. Thank you, she whispered. You don't know what this means to me. And Emma patted her shoulder. We all need a hand up sometimes, she said. Get some sleep, dear. Tomorrow's a new day. And Sarah laid Joshua in the bed and stretched out beside him, pulling the quilt over them both. The mattress was soft, the pillows clean and fresh-smelling. For the first time in months, she felt safe. As she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of Cole Walker and the unexpected kindness in his blue eyes. And she woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of voices in the kitchen. Joshua was awake beside her, cooing and waving his small fists in the air. Sarah changed his diaper, grateful for the clean cloths Emma had left on the dresser, and made her way to the kitchen. And Emma was at the stove, frying eggs and bacon. The smell made Sarah's mouth water. Good morning, Emma said cheerfully. Sit yourself down. Breakfast is almost ready. And Sarah sat at the long wooden table, settling Joshua on her lap. A moment later, Robert entered from outside, followed by Cole and two other men. Cole's eyes found Sarah immediately, and he smiled, a slow warming that made her pulse quicken. Morning, he said, taking a seat across from her. Sleep well. And better than I have in months, Sarah admitted. And the other two men introduced themselves as Jack and Tom, ranch hands who had worked the double R for years. They were polite and friendly, and if they had questions about Sarah's presence, they kept them to themselves. Breakfast was a lively affair, with conversation flowing easily around the table. Sarah found herself relaxing in the warmth of their company, the knots of tension in her shoulders beginning to loosen. And after the meal, Emma laid out Sarah's duties. She would help with cooking, cleaning, laundry, and mending. In exchange, she would receive room and board, plus a small salary. It was more than Sarah had dared to hope for, and she threw herself into the work with determination. And the days fell into a rhythm. Sarah rose early to help Emma prepare breakfast for the household. She scrubbed floors and washed clothes, her hands growing red and chapped but her spirit lightening with each passing day. Emma was patient and kind, teaching her the particulars of running a ranch household. Joshua thrived in the stable environment, growing chubby and cheerful. He began to crawl, pulling himself across the floor in pursuit of dust motes and shadows. And Cole became a constant presence in Sarah's life. He would stop by the house throughout the day, ostensibly to check on some task or deliver a message to Robert, but his eyes always sought Sarah out. He brought Joshua little gifts, a carved wooden horse, a smooth river stone, a hawk feather. He made the baby laugh with silly faces and gentle teasing. And one evening, about 2 weeks after Sarah's arrival, Cole found her on the porch after dinner. She was rocking Joshua to sleep, humming the same lullaby she had been singing the day they met. Cole settled onto the steps at her feet, his hat in his hands. You've done good work here, he said quietly. Emma says she doesn't know how she managed without you. And Sarah smiled. She's being kind. She managed just fine, but I'm grateful for the work and the place to stay. You gave me that, Cole. You gave me a chance when no one else would. And Cole turned to look at her, his expression serious. I didn't do it out of pity, Sarah. I want you to know that. Then why she asked, genuinely curious. And he was quiet for a moment, considering his words. Because when I looked at you that day in town, I saw someone who was down but not defeated. Someone who was fighting for her child with everything she had. That takes courage. That takes strength. And I admired it. And Sarah felt her throat tighten. I was terrified, she admitted. I am terrified. Every day I wake up afraid that this will all disappear, that I'll find myself back on that road with nowhere to go. And Cole reached up and took her free hand, his touch warm and steady. That's not going to happen, he said firmly. You've got a place here for as long as you want it. Emma and Robert think the world of you already. And he stopped, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say. And you, Sarah prompted softly. And his blue eyes met hers, and what she saw there made her breath catch. And I find myself thinking about you more than I should, he said honestly. Wondering if you're happy, if you need anything. Looking forward to seeing you at meals and hearing your voice. I know you've been through hell, and I know you've got no reason to trust another man after what happened with Joshua's father. But I want you to know that I'm here. Not just as a friend, but as something more if you'll have me. And Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Cole, I have a child. I have a past. I'm not some fresh young girl you can court properly. People will talk, they already do. And let them talk, Cole said, his jaw setting in a stubborn line. I don't care what people say, I care about you, and I care about Joshua. That little boy deserves a father, someone who'll love him and protect him and teach him to be a good man. And Sarah felt tears spill over, running hot down her cheeks. You would do that. Take on another man's child, and Cole stood and moved to sit beside her on the bench, his arm coming around her shoulders. He's not another man's child, he said fiercely. That man gave up any claim to him when he walked away. If you'll let me, Sarah, I'll be Joshua's father. I'll be the man he calls Papa and looks up to. And I'll be the man who stands by you through thick and thin, who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. And my baby's father abandoned us, Sarah said, the words breaking on a sob. It was the first time she had said it out loud to anyone but Cole that first day, the first time she had let herself feel the full weight of that betrayal. And Cole pulled her closer, his hand cradling the back of her head. Then I'll be his father now, he said, his voice rough with emotion. If you'll have me. If you'll give me the chance to prove that not all men are liars and cowards. I'll spend every day of my life making sure you and Joshua know you're loved and cherished. And Sarah turned her face into his shoulder and wept, great shuddering sobs that seemed to come from the very depths of her soul. Cole held her through it, murmuring soothing words and stroking her hair. Joshua slept on, oblivious to the moment that was changing the course of all their lives. /N when Sarah finally pulled back, her eyes were red but her expression was clearer than it had been in months. I'm afraid, she admitted. I'm afraid to trust again. Afraid to believe that this is real. /N I know, Cole said, cupping her face in his hands and wiping away her tears with his thumbs. And I'm not asking you to rush into anything. I'm just asking you to give me a chance. Let me court you proper. Let me show you that I mean what I say. And Sarah searched his face, looking for any sign of insincerity or ulterior motive. She found only honesty and a tenderness that made her heart ache. All right, she whispered. All right, Cole. I'll give you a chance. And his smile was brilliant, lighting up his entire face. He leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, a chaste touch that nonetheless sent warmth flooding through her body. You won't regret it, he promised. I swear to you, Sarah, you won't regret it. And the courtship that followed was sweet and careful. Cole was patient, never pushing Sarah beyond what she was comfortable with. He would sit with her in the evenings after work, talking about his day and asking about hers. He told her stories about growing up on a small ranch in Oklahoma, about losing his parents to fever when he was 16, and making his way south to Texas in search of work. He spoke of his dreams of one day having a spread of his own, a place where he could raise cattle and horses and build a life. And Sarah, in turn, opened up about her past. She told him about growing up in Missouri, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a seamstress. She spoke of Thomas, the charming drifter who had swept her off her feet with pretty words and promises of adventure. She described the slow realization that she was pregnant, the hasty arrangement they had made to travel west together and start fresh. And finally, the morning she had woken to find him gone, their money stolen, their supplies depleted, and a note that said simply, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I was such a fool, Sarah said bitterly. I believed every lie he told me. And Cole took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. You weren't a fool, you were in love, there's a difference. Love makes us vulnerable, makes us want to see the best in people. That's not a weakness, Sarah. That's what makes us human. And she looked at him, this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she had not dared to voice. How did you get to be so wise? She asked with a watery smile. And he grinned. Years of making mistakes and learning from them. He said. I'm not perfect, Sarah. I've got my flaws and my demons, but I'll always be honest with you. That's a promise I can make and keep. And as summer deepened into fall, Sarah found herself falling in love with Cole Walker. It was different from what she had felt for Thomas, less wild and reckless, more steady and sure. Cole was a man of his word. When he said he would do something, he did it. When he made a promise, he kept it. He was gentle with Joshua, spending hours playing with the baby and teaching him small things. He fashioned a teething ring from smooth wood and a small chair that Joshua could sit in at the table. And the ranch hands and the Reynolds treated Sarah with respect and affection. She became part of the family, her presence as natural as the rhythm of the seasons. Emma taught her to shoot, insisting that every woman on a ranch needed to know how to handle a gun. Sarah proved to be a quick study, her aim steady and true. And one evening in late October, as the air turned crisp and the leaves on the cottonwoods began to turn gold, Cole asked Sarah to take a walk with him. They left Joshua with Emma, who shooed them out with a knowing smile. Cole led Sarah away from the house, across a field to a small rise that overlooked the ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and lavender. /N/N/, it's beautiful, Sarah breathed, taking in the view. /N/, Cole stood behind her, his arms coming around her waist. She leaned back against him, feeling safe and cherished. /Sarah, he said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. I need to tell you something. /N/, what is it, she asked, turning in his arms to face him. And his blue eyes were serious, intense. I love you, he said simply. I'm in love with you, Sarah Mitchell. I love your strength and your courage. I love the way you sing to Joshua and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love the way you look first thing in the morning and the way you look right now with the sunset in your hair. I love everything about you, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you just how much. And Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears, but these were tears of joy, not sorrow. I love you too, she whispered. I didn't think I could feel this way again, but you've shown me that not all love ends in heartbreak. You've given me hope, Cole. You've given me and Joshua a future. And Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. He opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond, modest but beautiful. This was my mother's ring, he said, his voice thick with emotion. It's the only thing I have left of her. I want you to have it, Sarah. I want you to marry me. Let me be your husband and Joshua's father. Let me love you both for the rest of my days. And Sarah looked at the ring, then up at Cole's face. She saw love there and devotion and a promise of forever. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, Cole, I'll marry you. And he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close and kissed her. It was their first real kiss, and it was everything Sarah had hoped for, tender and passionate and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, their foreheads resting together. And I'm going to make you so happy, Cole murmured. And you already have, Sarah replied. And they were married a month later in a small ceremony at the ranch. Emma fussed over Sarah like a mother hen, helping her sew a new dress of soft blue calico with lace at the collar and cuffs. Robert gave her away, his eyes suspiciously bright as he placed her hand in Cole's. The ranch hands served as witnesses, and a traveling preacher performed the ceremony under the shade of a massive oak tree. And Joshua, now nearly a year old and toddling everywhere, served as an adorable if unpredictable participant, babbling happily and clapping his hands at random moments. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife and Cole kissed his bride, Joshua squealed with delight, and everyone laughed. And the celebration that followed was joyful and heartfelt. Emma had prepared a feast, and neighbors from surrounding ranches came to wish the couple well. There was music and dancing, and Sarah found herself swept up in the happiness of it all. Cole barely left her side, his arm around her waist, his eyes never straying far from her face. And as the evening drew to a close, and the guests began to depart, Cole led Sarah to the small cabin that Robert had helped him build over the past month. It stood a short distance from the main house, a cozy structure with a bedroom, a main room with a fireplace, and a small kitchen. Cole had crafted much of the furniture himself, working late into the nights to have it ready for their wedding day. And he carried Sarah over the threshold, a tradition that made her giggle. Joshua was already asleep in Emma's arms back at the main house, giving the newlyweds their first night alone. Cole set Sarah on her feet and lit the lamps, bathing the room in warm golden light. And welcome home, Mrs. Walker, he said softly. And Sarah looked around at the home Cole had made for them and felt her heart swell with love. It's perfect, she whispered. And Cole came to her and took her hands. Sarah, I know you've been hurt. I know you have scars that run deep. I want you to know that tonight, and every night we go at your pace. There's no rush. We have the rest of our lives. And Sarah reached up and cupped his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw. I trust you, Cole, she said. I love you, and I want to be your wife in every way. And their wedding night was tender and sweet, a gentle exploration that spoke of love and patience. Cole was careful with her, attentive to her needs and her fears. When Sarah cried, he held her and whispered words of love until the tears turned to laughter and then to sighs of pleasure. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, the future stretching bright before them. And the first year of their marriage was one of adjustment and growth. Cole officially adopted Joshua, giving the boy his name and claiming him as his son in the eyes of the law. Joshua took to calling Cole Papa before he could pronounce most other words, and the joy on Cole's face, each time the child said it, never diminished. And Sarah threw herself into making their cabin a home. She sewed curtains and quilts, planted a small garden, and learned to cook Cole's favorite meals. She continued to help Emma at the main house, the two women forming a bond that was more mother and daughter than employer and employee. And Cole worked hard on the ranch, saving every penny he could. He had dreams of buying land of his own, and he shared those dreams with Sarah late at night as they lay in bed. I want to build something for us, he would say. Something for Joshua and any other children we might have. A legacy. And Sarah discovered she was pregnant in the spring of 1879. The realization filled her with a complicated mix of joy and fear. Her pregnancy with Joshua had been overshadowed by Thomas's growing distance and her own anxiety about the future. This time, with Cole's steady presence and unwavering support, she allowed herself to feel the happiness she had been denied before. And Cole was over the moon when she told him. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure delight. We're having a baby, he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. We're having a baby. And he was attentive throughout her pregnancy, taking on extra chores so she could rest, rubbing her swollen feet in the evenings and talking to her growing belly as if the baby could already hear him. Joshua, now a rambunctious toddler, seemed to sense the change and became protective of his mother, patting her stomach gently and saying baby with great seriousness. And the baby came in late autumn, a daughter they named Emily Rose after both their mothers. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Sarah feared she would not survive it. But Cole was there the entire time, holding her hand and refusing to leave even when Emma suggested he wait outside. His presence gave her strength, and when Emily finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Sarah wept with relief and joy. And Cole held his daughter with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. She's perfect, he whispered, looking from the baby to Sarah and back again. You're both perfect. And Joshua was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to hold her and touch her soft hair. Cole taught him to be gentle, showing him how to support her head and rock her carefully. The sight of her 2-year-old son cradling his infant sister filled Sarah with a contentment she had never known was possible. And life settled into a new rhythm. Sarah's days were full with caring for 2 young children and managing the household. Cole continued to work the ranch, but he also began to make inquiries about available land. Robert, who had come to think of Cole as the son he never had, offered to help him secure a loan and provided advice on how to start his own operation. /N/N when Emily was 6 months old, Cole came home one evening with news that made Sarah's heart soar. "I found it," he said, his eyes alight with excitement. "200 acres about 10 miles west of here. There's a creek running through it, good grazing land and a small house that needs some work but has good bones. Robert's willing to co-sign the loan and I've been saving for years. We can do this, Sarah. We can have our own place." /N/N Sarah threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you sure?" she asked. "It's a big step. /N/N I've never been more sure of anything in my life," Cole said firmly. "Except marrying you. That's still the best decision I ever made." /N/N they moved to their new ranch in the spring of 1880. The house was small but sturdy, and with hard work and determination, they transformed it into a comfortable home. Cole built onto it room by room, adding a proper bedroom for the children and a larger kitchen for Sarah. He branded their cattle with a simple mark, a walking W for Walker, and set about building their herd. /N/N the work was backbreaking and the hours were long. There were setbacks and challenges, harsh winters and dry summers, sick cattle and equipment that broke at the worst possible times. But through it all, Cole and Sarah stood together. They were partners in every sense of the word, making decisions together and supporting each other through the hard times. /N/N Joshua grew into a bright, energetic boy who followed his father everywhere, learning to ride and rope and tend cattle. He had no memory of Thomas, knew Cole as his father in every way that mattered. Cole never treated him as anything less than his own son, and Joshua adored him with the uncomplicated devotion of childhood. /N/N Emily was a happy, cheerful child who brought laughter into their home. She had Sarah's brown eyes and Cole's easy smile. She was equally at home playing with dolls and helping feed the chickens, a perfect blend of her parents. /N/N in 1882, Sarah gave birth to twin boys, Samuel and Benjamin. The pregnancy had been a surprise, the discovery that there were 2 babies even more so. Cole had panicked slightly at the news, worrying about how they would manage with 4 children under the age of 6. But Sarah had laughed at his expression and told him they would figure it out together, just as they always had. /N/N the twins were a handful from the start. 2 bundles of energy who seemed determined to get into every possible kind of mischief. But they were also sweet and loving, and Joshua and Emily doted on their little brothers. The house was full of noise and chaos and love, and Sarah would not have traded it for anything in the world. /N/N as the years passed, the ranch prospered. Cole proved to have a keen eye for cattle and a knack for business. He slowly built their herd, making smart purchases and breeding decisions. Sarah managed the household accounts with careful attention, stretching every dollar and making sure they always had a cushion for emergencies. Together, they transformed their modest 200 acres into a thriving operation. /N/N they hired a hand to help with the work when Joshua was still too young to take on a man's load. His name was Henry, a quiet older man who had worked ranches all his life. He became part of the family, eating meals with them and helping to keep an eye on the younger children when Cole and Sarah were both busy. /N/N Sarah never forgot where she had come from, the desperate woman clutching a baby and begging for work in a town that had turned its back on her. She made it a point to help others when she could, offering work to those who needed it, sharing food with families who were struggling, and standing up for women who found themselves in difficult circumstances. /N/N when a young woman showed up at their door one cold winter morning in 1885, pregnant and alone, Sarah took her in without hesitation. Cole had looked at his wife, seen the determination in her eyes, and simply nodded. They gave the woman, whose name was Lucy, a place to stay and work to do. When her baby was born, a healthy girl, Sarah stood as godmother and Cole helped Lucy find permanent employment at a neighboring ranch where the owner was a widower with young children who needed a mother's care. The story ended happily, with Lucy and the rancher eventually marrying, but it started with Sarah's compassion and Cole's willingness to support his wife's generous heart. /N/N by 1887, their ranch had grown to 500 acres. They had built a proper barn and a bunkhouse for the hands they now employed. Joshua, at 10 years old, was already a capable horseman and worker. Emily, at 8, helped her mother with the younger children and had started learning to read and write from the traveling teacher who visited once a week. The twins were 5, full of mischief, but also showing signs of their father's steady temperament. /N/N Cole and Sarah's love had deepened over the years, maturing from the passionate romance of their early days into something even more profound. They knew each other's thoughts and moods, could communicate with a glance across a crowded room. They still made time for each other, stealing moments alone when they could, talking late into the night about their dreams and fears. /N/N one evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over their land, Cole pulled Sarah close. /Do you ever think about that day in redemption, he asked quietly. /N/N Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. Sometimes, she admitted. It feels like a lifetime ago. Like it happened to someone else. /N/N I think about it all the time, Cole said. I think about how close I came to just riding past you. I almost did, you know. I was tired and ready to get back to the ranch, but something made me stop. Something told me to turn around and talk to you. /N/N fate, Sarah murmured, or providence, or just plain luck. Whatever it was, I'm grateful for it every single day. /N/N Cole turned to look at her, his blue eyes still as clear and direct as they had been the first day they met. You saved me too, you know, he said. I was drifting before I met you, working hard but without any real purpose. You and the children gave me something to work for, something to build. You made me want to be better, to be the man you see when you look at me. /N/N Sarah reached up and touched his face, feeling the lines that years of sun and wind had etched there. You were already that man, she said softly. You just needed someone to see it. /N/N they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. From inside the house came the sound of the children getting ready for bed, their voices raised in laughter and minor argument. Henry was telling them a story, his deep voice carrying through the open window. /N/N I want one more, Cole said suddenly. /N/N Sarah looked at him in surprise. One more what? N/N one more baby, he said, a slight flush creeping up his neck. I know we have 4 already and I know it's a lot to ask, but I love our family, Sarah. I love the noise and the chaos and the way our house is always full of life. I want one more. What do you say? /N/N Sarah considered, thinking about the work involved, the sleepless nights, the worry that came with every pregnancy. Then she thought about the joy, the sweet weight of a baby in her arms, the miracle of new life. She thought about Cole holding their children, the tenderness in his touch, the love in his eyes. /N/N all right, she said, smiling. One more. /N/N Cole's whoop of joy brought the children running. He scooped them all up in a group hug, tickling them until they squealed with laughter. Sarah watched them, her heart full to bursting. This was her family. This was her life. And it was more than she had ever dared to dream. And their last child, a daughter they named Grace, was born in the summer of 1888. The birth was easier than the twins had been, and Grace was a calm, peaceful baby from the start. Her siblings doted on her, especially Joshua, who at 11 was old enough to be genuinely helpful. Emily appointed herself Grace's protector, and the twins were endlessly fascinated by their tiny sister. N as Grace grew, she proved to be the most like her father in temperament, easygoing and observant, with a quiet strength that reminded Sarah of the man who had changed her life. Cole adored all his children, but there was something special about Grace, perhaps because he knew she would be their last, perhaps simply because she was who she was. And the years continued to pass in a blur of work and growth and love. Joshua grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with a good head for business and a kind heart. He took on more and more responsibility at the ranch, becoming Cole's right hand. Emily was bright and determined, insisting on continuing her education beyond what the traveling teacher could provide. Sarah and Cole arranged for her to attend a school for young ladies in San Antonio for a year, a sacrifice that stretched their finances but which they agreed was worth it. And the twins developed distinct personalities as they grew. Samuel was adventurous and impulsive, always getting into scrapes and testing boundaries. Benjamin was more thoughtful and cautious, the one who thought things through before acting. Together they were formidable, and Cole joked that they would either end up running the state or running from the law. And Grace grew into a beautiful, gentle girl with a gift for working with horses. She could calm the most skittish animal with her soft voice and patient hands. Cole taught her everything he knew about horsemanship, and by the time she was 10, she could outride most of the hands. In 1895, Joshua, now 18, announced his intention to marry a girl from a neighboring ranch. Her name was Clara, and she was sweet and hardworking, with a ready smile and a genuine love for Joshua. Sarah welcomed her into the family with open arms, remembering how Emma had welcomed her so many years ago. Cole gave them a parcel of land and helped Joshua build a house, continuing the cycle of love and generosity that had defined their lives. And Emily, at 16, had her pick of suitors, but she was in no hurry to marry. She wanted to see more of the world first, she said, to experience life beyond the ranch. Sarah understood that desire, even as it filled her with a bittersweet ache. She knew that children grew up and went their own way, but that did not make it any easier. And the twins, at 13, were beginning to think about their futures as well. Samuel talked about becoming a lawman, while Benjamin was drawn to ranching like his father and older brother. Grace, at 7, was still young enough to be wholly present in the moment, and Sarah savored every day with her youngest child. And Cole, now in his 40s, showed signs of the hard years of work. His hair was streaked with silver, his face deeply lined, his hands gnarled from decades of rope and leather. But he was still strong, still vital, and when he looked at Sarah, his eyes still held the same love they had from the beginning. And Sarah, too, had aged. Her figure had thickened from 5 pregnancies, her face bore the marks of time and sun, and her hands were rough from years of work. But she carried herself with a quiet confidence, secure in the knowledge of who she was and what she had built. The frightened, desperate girl who had stumbled into redemption was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her own strength. And they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary in the fall of 1899. Their children threw them a party, inviting friends and neighbors from miles around. The house was packed with people, and there was music and dancing and an abundance of food. Sarah stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Cole dance with Grace, the little girl's feet balanced on his boots as he waltzed her around the floor. Her heart swelled with love and gratitude. And Robert and Emma Reynolds, now quite elderly, had made the trip from the Double R. Emma pulled Sarah aside at one point in the evening, taking her hands. I'm so proud of you, she said, her eyes misty. You've built a beautiful life, dear. You've raised wonderful children. You and Cole are an inspiration. And Sarah hugged the older woman tightly. I wouldn't have any of this without you, she said. You took a chance on me when I had nothing. You treated me like family, I'll never forget that. And Emma patted her cheek. You earned every bit of it, Sarah. You worked hard and you never gave up. That's what matters. And as the party wound down and the guests departed, Sarah and Cole found themselves alone on the porch, their favorite spot for quiet conversation. Cole pulled out a small wrapped package from his pocket and handed it to Sarah. What's this, she asked, surprised. And open it. He urged. N, she unwrapped the paper to reveal a leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. Cole, it's beautiful, she breathed. And I want you to write our story, he said. Everything that happened, from the day we met to now. I want our children and grandchildren to know where we came from, what we overcame. I want them to know that love can triumph over hardship, that family is built through choice and commitment as much as through blood. And Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I'm not much of a writer, she protested. And you don't have to be fancy, Cole said. Just tell the truth. Tell it the way you remember it. And Sarah nodded, clutching the journal to her chest. I will, she promised. I'll write it all down. And she did. Over the following months and years, Sarah filled the journal with their story. She wrote about the desperation and fear of those early days, about Cole's unexpected kindness, about falling in love and building a life together. She wrote about their children, each one unique and precious. She wrote about the hard times and the good times, the struggles and the triumphs. And she wrote about the day Thomas had abandoned her, not with bitterness, but with a kind of distant understanding. He had been weak, unable to face the responsibility of fatherhood, and his weakness had led her to Cole. In a strange way, she was grateful for it now. If Thomas had stayed, she would never have known the depth of love she shared with Cole, would never have built the life she had. And she wrote about Cole's promise that day on the porch in Redemption, the words that had changed everything. Then I'll be his father now. Such a simple statement, but it had contained a universe of meaning. It had been a declaration of intent, a promise of protection, an offer of love. And Cole had kept that promise every single day since. And as the new century dawned in 1900, the Walker Ranch was a thriving enterprise. Joshua and Clara had given them 2 grandchildren, with another on the way. Emily had returned from her travels and was teaching at a school in a nearby town, though she came home often for visits. The twins were preparing to strike out on their own, Samuel to join the Texas Rangers and Benjamin to start his own small ranch with Cole's help. Grace, now 12, was beginning to turn heads with her beauty and grace, though she remained wonderfully unaware of it. And Cole and Sarah, now in their mid-40s, had begun to think about slowing down, about letting the next generation take over the heavy lifting. They talked about travel, about seeing some of the places they had only read about in books. But those plans were always for someday, because for now there was still work to be done, grandchildren to spoil and a life to live together. And one spring evening in 1902, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sarah turned to Cole. Do you ever have regrets? She asked. And Cole considered the question seriously, as he always did. No, he said finally. I've made mistakes, sure. There are things I wish I'd done differently, but regrets. No, every choice I made led me to you, led me to this life. How could I regret that? And I used to think that what happened with Thomas was the worst thing that could have happened to me, Sarah said quietly. But now I see it differently. It was the thing that led me to you. It was the thing that brought me Joshua, who brought me to redemption, which brought me to you. Everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. And Cole took her hand, his thumb rubbing over the wedding band that had grown thin from years of wear. Do you remember what you said to me that first day? He asked. And Sarah smiled. I said a lot of things. I was desperate and scared out of my mind. And you said your baby's father abandoned you, Cole reminded her. And I said I'd be his father now. That was the moment I knew. The moment I knew you were going to be important to me, that this wasn't just about helping someone in need. It was about finding my family. And you kept your promise, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. You've been the best father Joshua could have asked for. You've been the best father to all our children. You've been the best husband I could have imagined. You've given me everything, Cole. And you gave me everything too, Cole replied. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to wake up every morning. You gave me children and grandchildren. You gave me a home and a life worth living. You gave me love, Sarah. Real, true, lasting love. That's a gift beyond measure. And they sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red and purple. The land stretched out before them, their land, built with sweat and tears and unwavering determination. In the distance, they could see the lights coming on in Joshua's house, could hear the faint sound of children's laughter carried on the evening breeze. And we did all right, didn't we? Sarah asked softly. And Cole squeezed her hand. We did better than all right, he said. We built something beautiful. We raised good children who are raising good children of their own. We loved each other through everything. We more than did all right, Sarah. We succeeded beyond anything I ever dreamed. And as the years continued to roll by, their family continued to grow and flourish. Emily eventually married a lawyer from San Antonio, a good man who respected her intelligence and independence. They settled in town but visited the ranch often, and Emily made sure her children knew their roots. Samuel distinguished himself as a ranger, earning commendations for his bravery and sound judgment. Benjamin's ranch prospered, and he married a spirited woman who was his perfect match. Grace, when she came of age, fell in love with a young veterinarian who shared her passion for animals. They took over the day-to-day operations of the Walker Ranch, allowing Cole and Sarah to finally step back and enjoy their golden years. And Robert Reynolds passed away in 1905, and Emma followed him just 6 months later. Sarah grieved them deeply, remembering the kindness they had shown her when she had nothing. Cole and Sarah made sure their memories were honored, naming buildings on the ranch after them, and telling their children and grandchildren stories about the people who had given them their start. And Henry, the loyal ranch hand who had been with them for decades, retired in 1908. They gave him a small house on the property and a pension, ensuring he would be comfortable for the rest of his days. He lived to be 90, surrounded by the family he had helped to raise, and when he died, He was buried in the family plot with full honors. And Cole and Sarah grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They took that trip they had always talked about, traveling by train to see the Grand Canyon and the Pacific Ocean. They visited their children and grandchildren, dispensing wisdom and love in equal measure. They sat together in the evenings, holding hands and talking about the life they had built. And Joshua, who had never asked about his biological father, came to Cole one day in 1910. He was 32 years old, a successful rancher with a family of his own. He said, using the name he had called Cole since he was a toddler. I want you to know something. I know you're not my blood father. Ma told me the truth years ago when I was old enough to understand, but you're my pa in every way that matters. You're the man who raised me, who taught me right from wrong, who showed me what it means to be a husband and a father. I'm proud to be your son. And Cole, now in his 60s with tears streaming down his weathered face, embraced Joshua tightly. I'm proud to be your pa, he said roughly. You've been my son from the moment I laid eyes on you. Blood doesn't make a family, Josh. Love does. And I've loved you every day of your life. And Sarah, watching from the doorway, wept happy tears. This moment, this affirmation of the bond they had built, was the culmination of everything they had worked for. Family was not about biology or circumstance. It was about choice and commitment and unconditional love. As Cole and Sarah entered their 70s, they slowed down considerably. Cole's joints ached from decades of hard work, and Sarah's eyes were not what they once were. But they were content, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. Their love story had become legend in the community, the tale of the desperate woman and the cowboy who had offered her everything. On a crisp autumn evening in 1918, as they sat together on the porch as they had done countless times before, Sarah turned to Cole. Do you remember what I asked you once? If you had any regrets, and Cole smiled, his blue eyes still clear despite his age. I remember. And my answer is still the same, no regrets, not a single one. Good, Sarah said, leaning her head on his shoulder. Because I don't either. You gave me everything I never knew I wanted. You gave me love and security and a family. You gave me a life worth living. We gave each other all of that. Cole corrected gently. It was never just me, Sarah. It was always us. Together. And they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had worked so hard to build. In the distance, they could see their grandchildren playing, their children tending to the evening chores, the cycle of life continuing as it always had. The Walker Ranch would endure long after they were gone, a testament to what could be built on a foundation of love and determination. And Cole passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1920, at the age of 73. Sarah was holding his hand when he took his last breath, and though her heart broke at the loss, she took comfort in knowing that they had had 42 years together, 42 years of love and partnership and joy. He was laid to rest on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple headstone that read /Cole Walker, beloved husband, father, and friend. And Sarah lived another 5 years, surrounded by her family and sustained by the memories of the life she and Cole had built. She continued to write in her journal, adding the final chapters to their story. She made sure each of her children and grandchildren knew where they had come from, the struggles that had been overcome, the love that had made it all possible. And when Sarah passed away in the spring of 1925, at the age of 73, she was buried beside Cole on that hill. Her headstone read /Sarah Walker, beloved wife, mother, and friend. Between their graves, their children planted an oak tree, a living symbol of the love that had taken root in the hardscrabble soil of Texas and grown into something magnificent. And the journal Sarah had kept was passed down through the generations, carefully preserved as a family treasure. Joshua's children read it to their children, who read it to theirs. The story of Sarah and Cole became the foundation of the Walker family legacy, a reminder that love could triumph over any adversity, that family was built through choice as much as blood, and that one act of kindness could change the course of multiple lives. And the ranch continued to thrive, growing and adapting with the times, but never losing sight of the values that had founded it. The small cabin where Cole and Sarah had begun their married life was preserved as a museum of sorts, filled with their belongings and the tools they had used to build their empire. Visitors were welcome to tour it, to see where it all started, to be inspired by the story of perseverance and love. And Grace, who lived to be 98, would tell anyone who asked that her parents had the greatest love story ever told. Pa saw Ma when she had nothing, she would say, her eyes distant with memory. When everyone else turned their backs on her, he offered her everything. And Ma, who had every reason to never trust a man again, took a chance on him. They built a life together out of nothing but determination and love. That's what real love is. It's not about grand gestures or pretty words. It's about showing up every day and choosing each other, over and over again. And the town of Redemption, where it all began, eventually died out as so many small towns did. But before the last resident left, they erected a plaque in the spot where Cole and Sarah had first met, by the old horse trough on the main street. It read, on this spot in 1878, a cowboy named Cole Walker met a young mother named Sarah Mitchell and offered her a second chance. Their love story reminds us that kindness and compassion can change lives, and that families are built on love, not blood. May we all have the courage to help those in need and the wisdom to recognize love when it appears. And the legacy of Cole and Sarah Walker extended far beyond their immediate family. The ranch employed dozens of people over the decades, providing livelihoods and opportunities. Sarah's example of helping women in difficult circumstances inspired others to do the same, and several programs were established in her name to assist single mothers and families in crisis. Cole's reputation as an honest, fair man who kept his word became the standard by which others were measured. As the 20th century progressed, and then gave way to the 21st, the Walker family remained rooted in the land and the values that Cole and Sarah had instilled. They adapted to changing times, incorporating new technologies and methods. But they never forgot the story of their founding, the desperate woman and the cowboy who had promised to be a father to her abandoned child. And Joshua's great-great-grandchildren still work the land, still tell the story, still keep the memory alive. The journal Sarah wrote sits in a climate-controlled case in the ranch office, its pages yellowed, but its words still clear and powerful. School groups visit to hear the tale. Couples come seeking inspiration for their own relationships. Historians study it as a primary source about life in the Old West. But more than anything, the story of Cole and Sarah Walker serves as a reminder of what is possible when people choose love over judgment, compassion over condemnation, and family over biology. It is a testament to the power of a promise kept, the strength found in partnership, and the enduring nature of true love. And the oak tree that was planted between their graves grew tall and strong, its branches spreading wide to provide shade for those who come to pay their respects. In the spring, it blooms with delicate flowers. In the summer, it provides shelter from the heat. In the fall, its leaves turn brilliant shades of gold and red. And in the winter, it stands bare but unbroken, weathering the storms and waiting for renewal. And like the tree, the love between Cole and Sarah proved to be something that could weather any storm, something that grew stronger with time, something that provided shelter and sustenance for generations to come. It was a love born of adversity and sustained by choice, a love that proved that sometimes the most broken people can create the most beautiful things. And in the end, that is what the story of Cole and Sarah Walker really is. A story of redemption and second chances, of promises kept and love freely given. It is the story of a woman who had every reason to give up but kept fighting for her child, and a man who saw past circumstances to the person beneath. It is a story of family built not on tradition but on choice, not on blood but on love. And it all began with a simple exchange on a dusty street in a town called Redemption, when a desperate woman said, "My baby's father abandoned us, and a cowboy replied, "Then I'll be his father now." Those words changed 3 lives in that moment and countless others in the years that followed. They stand as a reminder that the most powerful promises are often the simplest ones, and that love, real love, is always a choice we make every single day. Description: in the sweltering Texas summer of 1878, Sarah Mitchell stumbled into the town of Redemption with nothing but her baby son and crushing desperation after being abandoned by the man who promised her everything. When every door closed in her face, a cowboy named Cole Walker offered her something no one else would: a second chance. What began as an act of kindness blossomed into a love story that would span decades and build a legacy that endured for generations. And this is the story of how a broken woman and a compassionate man created a family not through blood, but through unwavering choice and commitment. It is a tale of redemption, resilience, and the transformative power of love in the untamed heart of the Old West. And discover how one promise changed everything.